did you take out of what Lynch said? And am I overreading that? Am I reading that incorrectly? Am I reading things into what he said that he did not say? You've been covering this team longer and know these guys better. So go ahead. What is your takeaway there?
Well, I think the continuation of that quote that you were reading, there was a reference to Brock Purdy, and that Brock had his chance and he sort of seized the opportunity. So I read it the same way you did. I mean, he's got to play. I think is just in reference to the fact that this is the guy's kind of missing element, which is experience and snaps and throws. And for one reason or another, and most of it is injury related, he hasn't been able to accumulate those yet. So that's it. I mean, I don't think he was being critical, but here we are going into year 3 of Trey Lance, and we really don't know much more about him than we did in year 1. And this is year 3 of what's a 4-year contract, can be bumped to 5. But point being, this is the time. This is the time that this guy has to take off. And, to be honest, last year was a good off season for Trey Lance. I don't quite understand all the criticism of him. He did everything that they wanted in the off season. He was, they went into Chicago and they lost that game. That was an oddball game. They were going to blow out the Seahawks, whether it was Trey Lance or Jimmy Garoppolo running the offense that day. So we just don't know a lot about Trey Lance at this point. And I think that's the bottom line. He needs to play. He needs to get out there. He needs to sort of accumulate this missing piece for him, which is dropbacks, snaps, throws. And he's going to get all he can handle this offseason.
So now I'm going through, that whole quote, and I'm not sure how to read it. And then my takeaway at the time, Matt, when I heard Lynch say that, is like, you know what? In my opinion, this third quarterback, whoever the third quarterback is, probably is going to tell us some of the story about how they view the other two guys as far as their health and their roster status will probably be revealed a little bit by whoever that third quarterback is. And my thinking is, if you go for, I don't know, let's say somebody who's a true backup quarterback or true third quarterback, if you went and signed Easton Stick, let's say, and who played at North Dakota State with Trey, knows Trey, that would be an indication that either Brock or Trey's your 1, Brock or Trey's your 2, Easton Stick's the 3, and that tells us how they view next year real clearly. But the uncertainty of Purdy has made other names crop in. And in my opinion, if that third quarterback is really not a third quarterback at all, but more of a starting NFL quarterback or a very, very, very good backup quarterback, then maybe they are going to be open-minded to moving off of one of their other quarterbacks. And my guess would be Trey. Just based on the way Purdy played and also the fact that Purdy's hurt right now and you can't move anybody hurt. And then fast forward to Saturday, there's a rumor from Albert Breer that the 49ers have interest in Baker Mayfield. And when I first heard that, I was like, oh God, that's terrible. I hate that idea. I really hate that idea, Baker.
I think that's one idea that unifies, a divided nation, a divided 49ers nation. It's that nobody wants Baker Mayfield here.
But then I thought about it and I thought, well, if Kyle really has, if we take Kyle at his word when he started, where he wanted Hoyer because he wanted a similar quarterback, a lot of people thought he wanted Cousins. And so, hey, those guys have similarities. If you want your quarterbacks to have similarities, or at least the offense that they run to have continuity, you want guys with similar skill sets. And then I'm thinking, okay, shortish right-handed quarterback with a pretty good arm who can make plays off schedule. That sounds a lot like Brock Purdy. Maybe Baker Mayfield is there as a backup because they've got Brock Purdy. Then I'm thinking to myself, is Baker Mayfield? I know he's slipped as far as his status, but has he slipped to the point where he's now he's vaulting past all the number 2 jobs, and now he's going to take a number 3 job in an advantageous place simply to rebuild his value. And that seems like a stretch to me. So, and then I'm like, well, maybe Breer got it wrong. I'm, crossing my fingers. Maybe Breer got it wrong. Then Jeremy Fowler from ESPN puts a second source on it over the weekend saying that, yeah, that's what he's hearing too, that the Niners have a lot of interest in Baker Mayfield. What do you think of the Baker Mayfield? He did, candidacy. He did lead a nice comeback win against the Raiders in a primetime game late in the year that meant 0. But he did show some life. He was better with the Rams. I definitely could envision him being better with the Niners. I mean, everybody's going to be better in this offense with these weapons, you would think. But where are you with Baker Mayfield? Where do you think they are with Baker Mayfield? And then to complicate things, there's an article out this morning on Niners Nation that quotes Mike Silver from Bally Sports, who has written a column about Aaron Rodgers, says the Niners are highly unlikely to make a run at Rodgers, but then goes on to say that, they're looking for a veteran like Matt Ryan, Jacoby Brissett, or Andy Dalton. And those are the guys that he's listing as guys that they're looking at to compete for a spot behind the 2 quarterbacks. What's your feeling on Mayfield? What's your feeling on that report? What do you believe?
Yeah, I think this upcoming surgery for Purdy is going to have a big bearing on the veteran that they sign. I mean, if the surgery's on Friday, if on Friday they go in and then it's what everybody expects and it's the internal brace procedure and the recovery is 6 months, which would put Purdy back on the field the first week of September. So he's probably not going to start. It's going to be Trey Lance to start the season, but Purdy would be available shortly thereafter. If that's the scenario, then I think it's going to be the lower tier guy. I mean, we're talking, I think Breer also mentioned Mason Rudolph. That seems like maybe the right caliber guy. Because we're talking about a guy in that scenario that's going to be your third quarterback who might have to be on the practice squad, may or may not dress for games. So, your Jacoby Brissett's, your Andy Dalton's, maybe even your Baker Mayfields aren't going to want that. And that also comes with a certain price tag too. So that's where I'm already forgetting that other North Dakota State quarterback's name.
Easton Stick.
Yes, Easton Stick. That's that level. Now, if the surgery is more complicated, which would lead to a more complicated, longer recovery, then I think you have to start to look at some of these bigger name guys like the Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Brissett is going to cost, I don't know, $8-9 million a year. I don't think you spend that amount of money if you've got him listed as your third guy. And on the 49ers, it's probably more of a 2.5 ranked quarterback in terms of the pecking order, just because of all the injuries that both of the guys at the top of the heap have had. And that's what the 49ers would use to sort of lure a bigger name guy in and say, hey, if history is any judge, you're gonna have a chance to run this team. Look, we went through 4 quarterbacks in 2022. So that's what a would-be free agent who's looking at the 49ers would have to answer. As far as Baker Mayfield, he does know the offense, having been in LA for the last part of last season. The 49ers seemed very quick, though, to dismiss him when he was available last year. Remember, Shanahan was asked in a press conference, and he said, "I don't see that happening." So I can't imagine that they're too impressed by him, but he may end up kind of, as you suggested, kind of falling very nicely into that, that caliber that they're going to need, and it's tricky because of that Brock Purdy surgery coming up.
How do you think he would fit in the locker room?
If it's number 3, I think that's a great question. I mean, I think that's a question that Shanahan and Lynch and the gatekeepers of that locker room, Trent Williams and Nick Bosa and George Kittle and Fred Warner, all those guys would sort of have to ask themselves, because he hasn't been a great team player in previous years. Can you imagine Bosa
Right.
and Mayfield sharing the locker room together? Exactly.
Planting the flag.
You got a little bit of water under that bridge. So yeah, that all has to, and there are a lot of quarterbacks who are going to be free agents. So I mean, do you take the risk of bringing a Baker Mayfield in when you could easily get a Mason Rudolph in? Is the difference in talent that big to take that risk? I don't know, but yeah, I might go elsewhere if I were the 49ers.
How great would the Niner locker room be if they put Baker's locker next to Bosa's, and every now and then in the middle of Baker's interviews, you hear Baker, Baker coming from Bosa.